Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. You see Zac Jackson there with me. Zach's going to be with me every Monday for the next 3 weeks, the next 2 weeks leading up to the draft, and then the Monday after the draft. Zach, we are 10 days away, and yet we were just talking about this. It doesn't have that sexy feel. That sounds weird to be talking about a draft and not a woman that way, but it doesn't have that sexy feel with the draft around, even though it's only 10 days away.
Yeah, it's kind of juiceless,
yeah.
Right? The Browns are picking 6th instead of 2nd. The Browns need linemen. The Browns have a lot of needs. There's no slam dunk here. So the list goes on.
Yeah.
I do think there will be some buzz build. Bull, I think the Browns have kind of – well, I think the reality is they don't know where they're going to go because the teams in front of them, 2 through 5, are so open. But I think they've subtly done a nice job of letting it leak, like, hey, we're open to anything. And if teams go through and finalize their plans, if there is a guy or maybe a set of guys that teams would come up for, the Browns are certainly one of those. So that speculation will continue. Next week there's 16 guys going to the draft. The Browns are actually having their voluntary mini camp next week. Yeah. So 2 days before there'll be a quarterback story. So I think it'll change quickly. It's just like, the Cavs have been juiceless too, right? Because they haven't played a meaningful game in a month. So that changes on Saturday. So for everybody who's been bored, it's about to pick up a little bit. And just like the NBA regular season, the draft run up, it's just too long. Like, we kind of hit this wall every year, even when it is a sexier situation.
Right. No, that's true. It's like, just get us to it.
Right.
We say the same thing about the playoffs, the same thing about the draft. And then it's exciting when it's here. But the last few weeks leading up is a little painful. Who do you think the player that could drop to 6 is the most likely player that teams would want to come up for that the Browns would not necessarily want to take?
Yeah, I think it's probably Caleb Downs.
Okay.
And then if I'm wrong about that, if that's just too high to take a safety, then it would be one of the pass rushers dropping. If David Bailey or Arvell Reese don't, whichever one of those guys doesn't go at 2, ends up dropping all the way, which kind of seems unlikely, but we don't know. I think some projections have Maui Noah going 3rd, and some projections have Maui Noah going 13th. Some projections have Carnell Tate going 3rd or 4th, and some of them have him going 9th. Right. So that's what I think it would be, Bull. The Dallas Cowboys are another team that's a little closer than they think, sees that one defensive prospect and wants to come up and move. And, of course, the Cowboys have some extra ammo from previous moves they've made. We think Jerry Jones is aggressive, desperate, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
It's a very sensible thing, right, to look and say the Cowboys could trade both their first rounders to get up to 6. The Browns could give their second round back, and all of a sudden they would have 3 of the top 24 picks. Which, if you like this draft, and maybe they do like it more than most pundits, or maybe they think they can be better this year than they wanted to, then all of a sudden you're really onto something, because then you really can address your needs and get that quote-unquote best available player regardless of position, and that's what they need. Whether you think the Browns are close, whether you think the Browns should just tear it all down and play for the future, like, having another good draft is key. And it doesn't have to be a Hall of Famer right away at 6. It doesn't have to be a certain position, even though they have 2 screaming needs on an already bad offense, right? It just has to be another good draft, because if there's 4 more really good rookies, then the whole temperature changes next year, whether they're in a full quarterback search or not.
Yeah, it's a good point. And that's why, you can never go wrong in theory taking the best player available, even if the player isn't necessarily an obvious fit right now, because as we've talked about, the Browns are probably a couple of years away from being a legit contender.
Yeah. And
just because pass rusher or safety might not be a top priority now, well, maybe in 2 years from now it would have been, but now it's not, because instead of taking an average offensive lineman, you took a safety or a pass rusher that's elite.
Yeah, look, who do you go through? The 2 quarterbacks in your division that can win the Super Bowl, that can win the MVP every year. And it hasn't gone great for those guys, but they're not going anywhere, Bull, at least not for a couple of years, right? So that would be the case of, hey, we're not close away, or we're not close to being where we really want to be. We love these players a lot more than the other players. And ultimately, in the big picture, we got to go through Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. And the Browns through the years have done a good job against both those guys by creating pass rush.
They have.
The Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah pick. His range showed up against Lamar Jackson. When you watch Lamar Jackson play, he spends half the time looking for where Myles Garrett is, right? Yeah. So, that would be the case for that. And like when you look at those guys too, I don't know a ton about Bailey. Frankly, I'm going to do a little crash course over the next 10 days. But when you look at Downs and Styles, they check every box. Great kids, leaders. Like Styles was not the best linebacker on his own team, but he might have been the best linebacker in the country other than that guy, Arvell Reese, right? Yeah. So when you see him in person, he is a freak of freaks. I think it would be more likely to be Downs or the edge rusher, but Downs is just going to be a guy who probably goes to 4 or 5 Pro Bowls. And if he's Ed Reed, and that's Canton, but he's a guy that's immediately going to start and make your team better. Cleveland, Cincinnati, Washington, the Giants, wherever he ends up going. Dallas.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see. And then obviously the Jeremiah Love thing hangs out there too. And I've been in favor of, like, if he's there, if you really think he's Bijan Robinson, then you draft him. I don't know that he's going to be there. We'll see. With running back, you never know how people value the position. But
yeah, no, it's a hard sell, Bull.
Yeah,
but I'm going to give it to you right now.
Yeah,
you take him. He's going to be good, and you're obviously counting on that he's going to be great. Well, now all of a sudden your short-term focus is on just building a run game.
That's
right. You're going to come out every week and you're going to say, we're not going to waste this defense like we did last year. We're going to play a certain way. We're going to take the ball out of the quarterback's hands except when he needs to. So however the quarterback situation evolves, we plan to be competitive. You're going to use the secondary free agent market to go get guys who are blocking tight ends and at least adequate offensive linemen, and a very short list of who's left. But you're just going to build the play a certain way this year and let it evolve from there. So it doesn't make perfect sense. It's a very hard sell. But I know from talking to people that a lot of teams really view Jeremiah Love as the best player in this draft. And I know that a lot of teams are completely uncertain here 10 days out whether he is going to go 4th or 6th or 8th or 10th, right? Just because he's a running back. And in over the course of 4 and 5 years and over the course of team building, that position comes last. So, it's really interesting here. Arizona and Tennessee at 3 and 4 are just like the Browns. They're not playing for the immediate. Tennessee thinks they have their quarterback and they better. But they're really, it could go a million different ways. The Jets are going defense because that's just where they have flopped most recently, among other flops, right? So it's kind of totally wide open. The thought of Jeremiah Love helping Cam Ward get to that next level makes perfect sense. But again, so does Carnell Tate, so does just taking a lineman, so does just taking a pass rusher and building your team that way.
Yeah, unlike the Browns, those teams don't have a good defense. So, whereas the Browns, it's I guess a weird fit to take a defensive player. It wouldn't be for Arizona, and it wouldn't be for Tennessee. So it is going to be interesting, I guess. I'm getting some juice now. It's going to be interesting to see, because we really, it feels like nothing's a sure thing outside of Fernando Mendoza going number 1.
Yeah, that's right. And that doesn't mean that these guys aren't great, right?
Yeah.
You're looking for, no matter where you are, you're looking for the best player available that fits you, and you're looking for him to develop over the course of time. So you would love these guys to be more ready-made. And I just think, when you talk about the juice thing, right? Travis Hunter was phenomenal. We all saw his highlight reel. We all watched him play.
Yeah.
He was this unicorn. They kept throwing out the word unicorn.
Yeah.
Abdul Carter introduced himself to the world in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
And here in Cleveland, it was like, well, if you put him with Myles Garrett, my gosh, you're going to have the best pass rush for 5 more years.
Yeah.
Then they ended up making the trade, which I don't think anybody disagrees with. It helped them get better. Now, could they have taken a wide receiver? Could they have taken a different position? It made perfect sense in that situation. So I think here 10 days out, a potential trade down to allow some other team to take Caleb Downs or Jeremiah Love, although I don't think anybody would trade up for a running back, right? Then that does make sense for the Browns where they are in their building, which is still early. And we're not going to know, Bull, for several months, like what's next for Finn and for Schlesinger, for Judkins. Those guys are good players.
Yeah.
Who's going to become a great player of that group? I think 1 or 2 of them certainly have a chance, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because the Browns definitely need a left tackle if they had to play a game today. And they definitely need multiple wide receivers if they had to play a game today. But you're thinking here in a 2 to 3 year scale more than you're thinking about this September, because they have valued versatility on the offensive line, and they feel like they have some pieces. I mean, they're committed to Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman for 1 more year, whether we like it or not. So
we don't like it. We don't like it.
They embraced the situation last year and said they had to go get Isaiah Bond because they had done such an awful job otherwise at wide receiver. So can he be a little better with a full offseason? Sure. Yeah. Is he going to be any good at all? We don't know, but they're counting on it to happen. Yeah. Now, that doesn't prevent you from taking Carnell Tate, but like, if a couple of these guys hit and you get semi-competent quarterback play, now you're onto something. I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it, right? We're presuming that on October 20th, this team's going to be 1-5 or 2-4. But we could be wrong about that.
Yeah, of course.
We could be wrong. Sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I honestly, I think the best way for them to be surprisingly good is going down the Jeremiah Love route.
Yes.
And draft, and then maybe going to sign Taylor Decker to play left tackle for a year or two. And like you said, load up on some blocking tight ends and run the ball 30, 35, 40 times a game and dominate. That's their best chance. Now, is that a long-term solution? I don't know, but probably not. But that would give them the best chance to be a surprise this year.
No doubt. And even short of that, right? Like the case for best available player, whomever it may be, is that, look, our feel was that our offense let down our defense and that we should have been better. Yeah. So like plugging this guy makes us better. And then we're not necessarily worried. We know we have holes at left tackle and receiver, but we have more picks. We have more resources to go patch that. We're not going to fix them all anyway. So, it's just about finding that right player and finding that right fit. And when you take a look back, like, hey, if there's not a knockout player at 6, this team needs other picks. They can address other things. Like there's not probably a huge drop off from Carnell Tate to Lemon stylistically. Maybe the top 2 tackles aren't left tackles anyway. So it's like, are you drafting a guy at 6 that plays right tackle or right guard for you, or do you wait and just take more stabs at it? You could find guys to play left tackle. Now that didn't go well last year, but like Cornelius Lucas, DeJuan Jones was never a realistic situation.
No,
that was a miss there. So they had some hits. And if they can, find the right scenario, it doesn't have to be. It's not like this player at 6 is coming in and making them win 8 games.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Obviously. Yeah. What's your sense about how much say Todd Monken, if at all, has in the draft process?
Well, I think he has an adequate amount. Yeah. I don't think he has the most amount, but I think he has to, in the building of the skill positions, and specifically at quarterback, and any decision that would be made there, 2nd round, 4th round, anywhere, he has to have the most input, right? And he has to have the most honest assessment about what he's seen so far and what he will see in these guys. So that's an interesting one. And I think Todd Monken had to take the job with the proper mix of optimism and reality here. That Watson's on the team because they can't afford to cut him. That Shedeur has a chance, but there's a high upside and a low downside to that.
Yeah.
And then it might be a year before you get input on really picking your quarterback.
Right.
Because like if you don't love a guy, you're not taking him here at 39 Bowl just to throw another bad quarterback in the ring of bad quarterbacks.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense.
You're taking good players to help support whomever that quarterback is going to be. And then you really dig in on the Drew Allers and Cole Paytons of the world and hope that it's 70 or 90 something, you can find something. And maybe you can, right? So, because there's going to be opportunity there for those guys. Like, Dylan Gabriel's going to be on this roster for anywhere from 2 more weeks to 6 more months, but he's not ever going to be a starting quarterback. And Deshaun Watson's not ever going to help you win a game again, right? So it's Shedeur or whoever else is next.
Yeah.
That's the reality of the situation. So, I think Monken needs to have input on the type of wide receiver that he wants. I think Monken needs to have input on, okay, Quinshawn's my running back and Harold Fannon's my tight end who can do other things. Here are the kind of players I would like to complement and help maximize those guys. Here's how they did it. Todd Monken needs a fullback. Todd Monken needs another true tight end so Fannin can move around. I asked him at the owners' meetings. He just coached Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews. I asked him, who does Fannin remind you of? Expecting to get an Isaiah Likely answer. What he said? Brock Bowers.
Wow.
So if that's the case, then now that's your number 1 receiver. He just lines up closer to the line of scrimmage, right?
Yeah, no
so, and that can be the situation. And frankly, that's one of the things I thought Shedeur did really well last year is he recognized the other guys were garbage and he threw the ball to Harold Fannin 14 times a game. True. I thought that was a sign of growth, not a negative.
That's a good point. Yeah. Zach, good stuff as always, man. We'll talk to you again next week when it'll be just 3 days away. Thanks for joining me as always.
Yeah, and I think we'll lay out. I think we're getting closer to the Carnell Tate just being the most likely pick.
Yeah,
and we can talk more about that. But I'm interested to see what kind of floats out there this week as they maybe ramp up the selling, because they've done it. They wouldn't admit that they've done it, but they've done it. And last year it was about this time, 10-ish days out, that the deal got done for Hunter, and it did not leak until that afternoon.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. Thanks, Zach.
All right, thanks, Bull. Talk to you soon.
All right, Zac Jackson from The Athletic. Good to chat with him as always. Again, he'll be with me next Monday as well, with 3 days before the draft, and then the Monday after the draft to recap what the Browns did. If you're looking for a betting angle, check out the Top Picks news feed in your BetRivers app. The BetRivers Banter news feed is filled with picks from BetRivers Network personalities and more handicappers to give you expert insights. I went 2-0 last week, and hopefully we'll do the same again this week. Tap the Top Picks icon in your BetRivers app to get the latest tips. A couple other things before we wrap up. First bad series for the Guardians. They have their first losing series, and they did not play well in 2 of the 3 games. They lose 2 of 3 in Atlanta, including a 13-1 beatdown yesterday. Tanner Bybee really struggled, and he's been clearly the Guardians' worst pitcher so far early in the season. He went 4 2/3, allowed 12 base runners and 8 earned runs. Kobe Allard got smacked around out of the pen, and they finally brought Austin Hedges in to end the game. And the only run, a Rhys Hoskins solo homer in this one. So bad series. They did have a good game in the middle in Atlanta when Parker Messick pitched great and continues to pitch very well. Messick 6 2/3 shutout innings on Saturday as the Guardians won 6-0. But again, they lose 2 out of 3. They lost the first game on Friday 11-5. And Slade Ciccone did not pitch well. So bad starts for Ciccone and Bybee over the weekend. Not a great weekend for the bullpen outside of the Messick start. You did get to see Kyle Manzardo hit a home run on Friday, and maybe he's coming out of this slump a little bit. He had, what did he have? I honestly shut off the game when it was like 8-0 yesterday. I know he had at least 1 hit yesterday. 1 for 4. So in his last 3 starts, he's gone 3 for 10 with a solo homer and only 3 strikeouts. So it's getting better. So we'll see him hopefully get on track here soon. As for the Cavs, because of the results last night, the Cavs will play the Toronto Raptors in the first round of the playoffs. I know it seemed like for a while they were going to play the Hawks, but it is in fact going to be the Raptors. And I know Jason and Mikey McNuggets were both telling me that they think that's a good matchup for the Cavs. The Cavs will begin the playoffs in 5 days, next Saturday, April the 18th. Obviously, game 1 of the series will be at home. It's a 1 o'clock start against the Raptors. The rest of the full schedule coming out. But Cavs, Raptors in the first round. And if you get to the rest of the first round, you've got, let's see. So it ended up being Atlanta will play the Knicks. They finished as the 6th seed. And so we got the play-in round in the East. You got Miami against Charlotte tomorrow, right? Yeah, Miami-Charlotte tomorrow. The winner of that game plays the loser of the Orlando-Philly game. The winner of that game is the 7th seed. The winner of the Miami-Charlotte winner versus Orlando-Philly loser is the 8th seed. And there you go. The Knicks and Hawks will start their series at 6 p.m. on Saturday. So it all gets going with the play-in this week, and then we start Saturday with the regular playoff games. Looking forward to that. So hopefully the Cavs will take care of business against the Raptors. And if they win that, they will probably play the Pistons. We shall see. The Pistons, as I said, will play whichever team wins the second Eastern Conference or the third Eastern Conference play-in game, which would again be the loser of Orlando-Philly versus the winner of Miami-Charlotte. That's the team that Detroit will play in the first round. As you can see, the Cavs are a 7-point favorite in their opening game on Saturday. The over-under is 218.5. All right, thanks for joining me, folks, as always. Dustin and I will be live tomorrow. Our live shows are now at 8:30 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday and Thursday. Got a lot of stuff coming up. Dustin will be with me live tomorrow and Thursday at 8:30. Next week, we'll have Zac Jackson again. I'll have Sean King again. We'll have live podcasts following the first round of the draft and the morning after the second round and before the third round of the draft. So a lot of good coverage coming up in the next 2 weeks. So stick with me here in the bullpen. Check out the Bet Rivers app. If you're not using it already, make sure you are. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, please do so. I appreciate it. All right, thanks to Levi and Max for producing today, and thanks to all of you for watching and listening, and thanks to Zac Jackson for joining me. I'll talk to you tomorrow, live at 8:30 a.m. with Dustin. Where else but right here in the bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. See you, everybody.